The last phase of an ALTA survey or land title survey is a negotiation between me and the land title insurance company. I've got another video that talks about that. I'll try and remember to link to that video in the comments below on YouTube. In this video, I want to talk about why I, as a land surveyor, can't just take all the risk for the land title insurance company. Sometimes when I find a problem on an ALTA survey, the client, which is usually the buyer, but could be the seller, a lot of times they want me to just do whatever it takes to make the title insurance company happy so that the title insurance will get issued and the bank will fund the loan. I can't do that always. And in this video, I want to explain why. So I can't take all the risk for the land title insurance company in an ALTA survey. So why not? Why can't I? I want to talk about that. So just to review, what's an ALTA survey? It's a special survey, special type of boundary survey that we do as part of a commercial real estate transaction. It is to remove the survey exception from the land title insurance coverage. And there's a very specific set of rules we have to follow, a specification. And usually the lender is the one that's making the buyer get the survey. So it's usually being done for the bank so that the bank will fund the loan to the buyer. So why can't we, or I, the land surveyor, take all of the risk for the title company? I'll be honest with you, that would be easier for everybody. If I just gave every property a clean bill of health, didn't show any problems on the land title survey, everybody would be happier. The bank, the buyer, the seller, the brokers, the lawyers, the title company, everybody would be happier. My bank would be happier because I would do more ALTA surveys. So everybody would be happy. That sounds like a better world. Why not just live in that world? And the reason why is because everybody would be happier in the short run, but there would be some very unhappy people in the long run. Who would be unhappy in the long run? In the long run, the bank is going to be unhappy. And they're the ones that are making the buyer get an ALTA survey to begin with. So look, I can lie to everybody on the ALTA survey. In other words, I can paper over problems and the loan will get funded. But if and when the bank has to sell that property and there's a major problem, like a building encroachment, they're gonna be upset. In fact, they're gonna be so upset they are probably gonna sue me and the land title insurance company. That's why banks get ALTA surveys. So it's not in the bank's interest, and it's really not in the buyer's interest for me to paper over problems. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Typically, the client on an ALTA survey my client is the buyer. So why would I lie or paper over problems when I know in the long run that is going to harm my client, potentially, and their bank? That's not what a good professional does, and so I won't do it. So it certainly would be easier if surveyors just gave every property a clean bill of health when they do ALTA surveys, but it's not what we need. It's not what society needs. It's not what our clients need. So here are 4 reasons why I can't take all the risk for the land title insurance company on a commercial transaction with an ALTA survey. Number 1, I'm not getting paid to do that. I'm not an insurance company. I'm not in the insurance business. If you want to pay for insurance, you go to a land title insurance company. They are getting paid to take the risk. That's super important, so I'm going to say it again. I want it to be super clear. I am not an insurance company. You already have an insurance company. That is the land title company. They are an insurance company. They are getting paid to take the risk. I am not getting paid to take the risk. I am getting paid to perform a survey and report facts. Okay? If you want to insure more of the risk, you're going to pay more for your title insurance. Like, that's a negotiation you can have with your insurance company. Okay, so that's the main reason. I'm not getting paid to take risk, unreasonable risk. I'm not an insurance company. I'm a land surveyor. The second reason is, and I talked about this, it doesn't help the buyer and the lender in the long run. Those are typically who my client is. I'm typically working for the buyer and ultimately the bank. And even if they weren't my client, it doesn't matter. The ethical thing is to make sure that I report problems that I find. The third reason is I'm not going to lie. I'm a licensed professional. I have more obligations to all sorts of parties. That's part of the reason why I'm a professional, not a tradesperson. I'm not going to lie on an ALTA survey, period, full stop. I'm not even going to do stuff that's slightly shady. I'm just not. Number 4, I don't have all the data. You know, I don't know a lot of times what the property is being purchased for. I don't know how much the loan amount is. I don't have access to all the records that the title company has. I mean, there's all kinds of variables here that contribute to the potential risk in the transaction, and I don't have the data, right? Like, and you know why? Because I'm not the insurance company, right? If I was the insurance company, I'd be asking all kinds of other questions about those other things. I'm not, right? Like, I don't have all the information about the transaction. I am given the information I need, typically, to properly perform an ALTA survey. That's it. I don't know how much the loan is. I don't know what the buyer's credit score looks like. You know, I don't know what other potential title risk might be present that aren't related directly to the survey. So there's all kinds of unknowns. I don't have all the data. That's why I can't take all the risk. Number 5 is I can do amazing things as a land surveyor, but I do not have a magic wand or an eraser. I always tell people, once I see something on an ALTA survey, I can't unsee it. You know, if I go out there and you've got a giant tank of fertilizer leaking all over the ground, like, yeah, I'm gonna put a note about that on my survey. And even if you rush out and clean it up, I can't unsee that, right? So I don't have a magic wand. I don't have an eraser. If I find problems, I'm gonna have to report those on my survey. Now, here's what I want you to remember. So to some extent, surveyors are troublemakers, right? Like, everybody's ready to close a deal, right? The buyer's broker, the seller's broker, the bank, the title company, the buyer and the seller, the attorneys, like, everybody's happy. They want the deal to close, and then some stinking oaky hillbilly surveyor comes in and finds a problem, right? So I understand why that upsets people, but I want you to think about this for a minute. If I find a problem, we can fix it. There isn't any kind of problem really that we can't fix. Now, sometimes I can't fix it in time to close the deal, but sometimes I can, right? And isn't everybody better off if I fix the problem before the transaction closes? I mean, that's a way better solution than papering over a problem, right? Okay, so those are the 5 reasons why I can't take all the risk for the title company. Okay, I'm just going to go over them again. I'm not getting paid to take that risk. I'm not an insurance company. 2, it doesn't help the buyer and the lender in the long run. 3, I'm not going to lie. 4, I don't have a magic. I don't have all the data that I need to assess that risk. 5, I don't have a magic wand or an eraser. Okay, so I want to give you. You might be wondering, well, like, you know, Landon, what are you talking about? Like, how would the title company ask you to take risk that doesn't belong to you? So I'm going to give you 2 examples. These are true stories. So this actually happened to me in the last 2 years. Both these examples. And they were both examples of where the title insurance company was asking me to take unreasonable risks that I wasn't being paid for. Okay, so here's the first one. I did a survey in the Bay Area. It was of like 6 or 7 apartment buildings. Did an ALTA survey. And the title company wanted me to put a note on the survey that said there were no utilities underneath the buildings. I'm like, that's crazy. I said, there are all kinds of utilities under the building, under the apartment buildings. They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, there's sewer laterals, there's water mains, there's conduit, there's internet and phone cable. I was like, I tell you what I will do. What I will do is we can like get some building plans in the utility market locate crew out there, and I will map utilities and show them on the survey, but that's expensive. But there's no way I'm putting a note on there that says there aren't any utilities under the buildings. And the title company was ticked, and the buyer was ticked. They're like, you know, why can't you just put that note on? So I explained it a couple different times to a couple different people, and then finally the title insurance company was like, yeah, you're right. That note doesn't really apply to this kind of site. Okay, but that's one example. Totally unreasonable to ask me to do that, right? It wasn't true. First of all, it was a lie, and that's not my risk, right? Like, if you want to know where the utilities are, title insurance company, pay to have them mapped. Pretty simple. Okay, here's a second example. I did a infill development project. We ended up doing an ALTA on, and there was several parcels that had kind of been globbed together into a common ownership. And there were some gaps and overlaps in the old land descriptions for the deeds. They weren't huge, but it was 1 to 5 feet, depending on how you put the deeds together. So I put a note on my survey that explained that. And the title company freaked out. They said, "Oh my God, you got to take that note off." I said, not only did they want me to remove the note, they wanted me to put a note on that said there were no gaps and overlaps. I said, "I can't do that. That's not true. There are gaps and overlaps." Right? And so there was a bunch of back and forth. And so finally, I was trying to be reasonable. I was trying to take care of my client, who was the buyer in this case. And I said, "Hey, look, how about I put a note on that says there are no major gaps or overlaps?" I said, I'm willing to do that. The title company said, "Nope, no deal." And in that particular transaction, the title company refused to insure, and the buyer walked. So I wasn't able to close that deal, and that was a bummer. But I ended up working with the seller after that to fix some of the problems that they had with the grant deeds, with the descriptions in the grant deeds. So sometimes title companies ask for unreasonable stuff. You as a land surveyor say, "No, I can't do that. I can't lie, or I can't take that risk on. It's not reasonable," and the deal falls apart, and that's a bummer. It's always super frustrating when that happens, but sometimes you can't control that. Okay, so in conclusion, I'm not an insurance company. You can't ask me to take all the risk for the land title insurance company. They're going to try and push some of that risk on me. I don't mind taking reasonable risk that I can control, but if it's unreasonable risk, I'm going to push it back for the 5 reasons that we talked about, right? I'm not an insurance company, and so I can't take on all that risk. Your title insurance company has to take on some amount of risk. I cannot eliminate all the risk for them. They're an insurance company. That's their job, is to take on some reasonable amount of risk. So in future videos, I will talk a little bit about how selling an ALTA survey is somewhat like selling an insurance policy, but I'll explain how surveyors are different from land title insurance companies, and I will also talk about when you surface a problem in an ALTA, some of those problems you can fix before the closing, some you can't. What kind of problems can be fixed? What kind of problems usually cannot be fixed before closing? We'll do a separate video on that. So if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Like or share the video on social media for me. Subscribe to our mailing list if you haven't done that. And if you need help with an ALTA survey or a commercial real estate transaction or land development project in California or Nevada, reach out to my team. We do good work. We can help you keep your title insurance company honest. And we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching.